The saying, eat the rich, is a fairly popular saying used all over the internet, and it's a sentiment that is promoted by socialists and communists mostly. With ever growing inequality in a capitalist society, it is easy to see why this saying is thrown around just so frequently. The insane gap between the lifestyles of the bottom 10% and the top 10% of society feeds into this dream of taking and sharing such vast amounts of wealth amongst the common public. People see business leaders like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, and they instantly grow envious of their absurd wealth, with unrealistic amounts of assets and cash available to them. People valued in the billions when very few could even dream of being just millionaires. People desire to be celebrities for this very same reason, as celebrities are incredibly rich, while also typically being quite popular amongst the general public. Families like the Kardashians live off the attention given to them due to their vast amount of wealth and their rather luxurious lifestyle, even if it is quite shallow and rather devoid of meaning. The wealth disparity in countries like the United States has reached levels unseen throughout history, and the ability to see this vast inequality online only makes people more jealous. The ability to see inequality to a greater extent through social media also likely feeds into the rise of socialist and communist ideas and beliefs, with people feeling hopeless to ever accumulate such a great amount of wealth as those that run big businesses or become celebrities. An issue with those who tend to say eat the rich is that they never want to be considered part of that rich, even if they fit their original parameters of rich. The goalpost tends to get shifted quite a bit when talking about this issue of inequality, and people need to stay a bit more focused on a set goal rather than just shifting things whenever they reach a position of wealth that they originally personally despised. The bigger question becomes, is eating the rich a good idea? Now, of course, this is obviously not a call for cannibalism, but instead the desire to divide up the wealth of rich people. Ideally, there would be no need for such a thing, as taxes would ideally be scaled to a point that such inequality would not be so troubling to the general public. If everyone lived relatively comfortable and stable lives, the inequality that exists in society would not be such a point of anger for people. Dealing with the unfairness that society presents is difficult, as there is no simple solution that would fix everything, as much as people would like there to be one. This idea gets more and more complicated as more thought is put into it. At what point is someone considered rich enough to be part of this group that should be eaten? People often complain that billionaires like Jeff Bezos don't deserve their wealth, and that the service they came up with should not make them as wealthy as they are. So then, how should society determine whether or not someone has earned their wealth? No one can deny that Amazon is a huge business and provides a huge service to the world, although they certainly have major issues with how their workers are treated. So why does Bezos not deserve his wealth? The complaint is often that big business owners are exploiting their workers' labor for profits. But without an organized business, there would be no job for the workers and there would be no service provided. Bezos certainly has more money than he would ever need, but Amazon is one of the biggest companies in the world, and Bezos has been the head of it for nearly 3 decades, so it is hardly surprising that he is so rich. So then, how do we eat the rich, and how do we decide who is part of that rich? We do so through taxes. However, this is much easier said than done. Those who are rich rarely allow people to part them from their wealth, and do their best to find ways to dodge taxes, whether illegally or legally. However, even if the rich did pay the proper amount of taxes, the wealth disparity could still be quite absurd. With the way taxes are structured, rich people can easily stay rich once they have acquired their wealth. Those who are born into wealth and don't have to earn much don't end up paying much taxes, since taxes are typically done on earnings and not wealth. So taxes done on wealth would be the obvious fix, right? Wrong. Taxing people by wealth and by earnings would just increase taxes for everyone, and thus make life even harder for those who are poor and already struggling to get by. So then we should only introduce wealth taxes for the rich, but that means the question of who the rich is needs to be answered. Again, easier said than done, as it's hard to determine at which point people are actually considered rich. Wealth can be hidden in assets, like houses and cars, and for those rich enough, planes and yachts. This makes it a lot harder for a government to determine who fits into the rich category, and so it would make implementing such a tax a bit of a nightmare task. One could propose implementing a tax bracket for wealth. However, I have my own issues with tax brackets that we'll get into shortly. Tax brackets are really a bit of an awkward solution to the issue of taxes. They are quite frustrating as they don't seem to work, at least in my opinion. The brackets aren't set at a suitable point, and they tend to stop far too early. It becomes awkward as someone could get a promotion for all their hard work and end up earning an unnoticeable increase in their wages due to being pushed into a higher tax bracket and thus being taxed harder. This is quite frustrating as it doesn't seem like a valid system at all. However, those who earn more need to carry more of society's weight if society is expected to provide benefits like welfare or simple medical coverage. So there does need to be some scaling system in place, but the current system is not well scaled at all. Again, fixing this scaling is much easier said than done, but an important fix, I believe, would be to have it continue to scale, including more brackets. America's 2022 income tax brackets stop at roughly $525,000, and Canada's 2021 income tax brackets stop at roughly $215,000. This system needs a better scaling, as people earning that much should be paying a little less, while those who earn even more should land in higher tax brackets that don't currently exist. Improving the system would be very complicated though, as a country doesn't want to scare off big businesses and well-paid, skilled workers. But if a greater length of scaling could be implemented, with brackets reaching into the millions, then those at the lower end of the tax brackets could pay a little less, with the rich supporting more of the weight of society with their surplus wealth. This idea of eating the rich is quite appealing to the relatively poor general public. However, a lot of thought and effort needs to be dedicated in order to come up with a suitable fix to the current wealth inequality. A big issue with the people that promote this idea of dealing with wealth inequality this way is that once they reach certain levels of wealth, they tend to move the goalpost. Those who desire to pull down the wealthy and redistribute the wealth never want to actually be included in that group of the wealthy. And so if they ever do end up in that group, they just change what they say so that they aren't included. A classic example of this is Bernie Sanders changing from saying millionaires and billionaires shouldn't exist to simply saying billionaires shouldn't exist. Bernie conveniently dropped millionaires from the group that he is against once he himself became a millionaire. This goalpost shifting makes addressing the actual issue a lot harder, as it makes the message more and more inconsistent every time it is shifted. Solving this issue is much more complicated than I think most people believe it is. A country can't be too harsh on the rich, or they'd move to a country that doesn't have as intense of taxes. Tax havens exist for this very reason, to pick up business from companies that want to avoid high taxes. However, this issue does need to be addressed in a way that both won't scare off rich people and also doesn't kill people's ambition. This issue can be compared to the problems communism presents when it comes to ambition. When doing well at your job and earning a promotion leads to you getting taxed heavier and barely even seeing any gains from all your hard work, it really undermines any sense of ambition, just like how communism undermines ambition by trying to redistribute wealth completely equally. Seeking a perfectly equal society is simply an unrealistic goal, but society does need to be more fair and more equal. Well thought out tax reform could do wonders in shifting society away from this insane inequality and towards a greater sense of balance. But such reform would take years to think and plan out and could potentially be quite inefficient and unbalanced initially. I'm personally no economist, but a careful rearrangement of tax systems would be far less disruptive than shifting an entire economic system as a whole. The shift from a capitalist society to a communist society or any other sort of completely different society is a lot harder to smoothly implement.